Crime Beat, the second part of In Touch this week. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson. We discuss criminal justice issues and just crime in general, how it affects all of us, because it does affect you. Even when you're not the direct victim, they're going to get in your pocket one way or the other. What's going on this week?
Well, we do something in our office called a re-entry program, and it's the first Tuesday of every month. I meet with somewhere between 50 and 60 people that have either been probated or paroled. Paroled from prison, meaning they've been sent to prison and have been let out by the parole board, or they have been probated by a judge and never went, they're convicted of a crime, and the judge probated them, mean leave them on the street and sort of supervise them. Well, they don't get any supervision, but they just leave them on the street. And this is all part of that hug a thug or catch and release philosophy, crime fighting strategy that our legislature's put on us for property offenders. At any rate, I was talking to this group, and I go around and introduce myself to all these people that our office has convicted when they've gotten out. And I ran into this one guy, and here's what I asked: who they are, and where are they from, and are they on probation or parole? And if they're on probation or parole, I said parole for what kind of crime, or probation for what kind of conviction. And I ran into this little guy, and he said criminal mischief.
Which is what?
Well, that's causing damage to property. And I said, that typically means that you've stolen metal to take and sell to a scrap dealer. Is that what you did? He said, yeah. I said, you know what ticks me off about those things? You guys that commit these crimes, I'm talking to this guy, is that you'll steal something worth $50, $200 copper, but you cause thousands of dollars worth of damage. And he says, well, that's what I did. I said, well, what do you tell me about it? He says, well, I stole these, whatever he stole. And I said, how much damage? He said, $60,000. And I said, and you're on probation. That means you didn't go to jail, didn't go to prison at all. He says, that's right.
And you're not going to pay it back.
Yeah.
And you're not going to make them pay it back, right?
Yeah, and so I ran into some friends of mine that have a business in town, and they had the same thing happen to them. And the wife said she really likes listening to this show, this rant, and she said, why don't you talk about that? So I thought it was an appropriate topic to talk about, and that's this property criminals that are basically repeat offenders. They're almost all repeat offenders, these guys. Burglars, people break into cars and steal stuff, people now that are stealing all this copper and metal and that sort of stuff and selling it to the scrap yards. And so that's what we're...
from churches a lot. I mean, you see
same thing. It's all metal.
It's all over the news. They'll go into churches and steal every piece of copper they can steal and do thousands of dollars worth of damage. Air conditioners,
sure.
They steal them off a lot of people's homes too. Builders that build homes before anyone can move in.
I'll tell you a case. Some guy built a very expensive home, and he equipped it with the best things he could. And in this instance, it was solid brass, decorative doorknobs, hinges, kick plates, all of that kind of stuff. And a couple of yard birds came in and stole it all before they could move in.
Oh, he's a rich guy. He can afford it.
Well, it was $140,000 worth of stuff. Well, that's unfortunately what people think.
Sure.
And it's just property. Well, let me explain something to you. I'm starting to hear angry people now at this whole process of ignoring these property crimes.
Well, I think that the copper theft is the first effect, the most prevalent effect that we've seen from the legislature passing the laws that that take away the police officer's tools to arrest people. And an example of that is if a police officer, for instance, let's say that he sees a guy leaving a church parking lot at 2 in the morning, and in that guy's bag is copper. And the officer looks in the bag, sees the copper, and then he goes around to the side of the church and notices that their air conditioner has not been broken into. So he really can't piece the two together right then and there. He needs a little more time to investigate to see whichever, because this guy's obviously been hitting churches all night. He just hadn't got to this one yet. But by the way they changed the law, the officer's only allowed to write that person a ticket for having that copper. He can't arrest him because they took away the officer's ability to do that. So you have to write this guy a ticket, and you hope that the guy gives you a real ID. You hope that you've got the right guy. If you can't arrest him, then it's going to be more difficult to interview him and get more information from him. So you write him a ticket, and then the officer finds out later at the end of his shift that 6 churches were burglarized that night or broken into, and that's where that copper came from. But he can't really do anything about it because the guy's gone now, and he didn't have the ability to arrest him.
You can't even. You see that what we've had to start doing, Officer Don, is we don't know the value of the copper. Mm-hmm. You see, because we have to get past a $500 threshold before it can be a felony. Yeah. We can, and police can't. They don't know that. They just know he's got this metal. Sure. They also don't know the cost of the damage, so we can't get to the felony criminal mischief charge. So you're right. Give him a ticket.
That's right. And forget about common sense, because I'll submit this to you. You've seen cases like this with burglaries. Even if the officer walks behind the church and sees that church has had its copper removed, it's a hard one, because the officer has to actually see him do it. Because what's this guy going to say? He's going to say, my friend gave me this and ran when you got here. And the officer's going to go, well, who's your friend? His name is Chicken Wing. I just know him by his nickname. Chicken Wing. You don't know his real name? No, I don't know his real name. How long have you been hanging with him? For a while, he's a friend of my boyfriend's sister. Whatever. Or my sister's boyfriend. They just give you this runaround, and even though common sense says that guy just took the copper, there's no way to prove it, because you got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and we got to send that to the prosecutor. And if we send that to your office and go, well, we had the guy, leaving the church parking lot, he had the copper in his thing. What, you're gonna tell us, look, guys, did he admit that he did it? No. Did you have any witnesses that he did it? Can you link the copper to that church? I'm sorry, but it's not something we can probably get a conviction on. All we can charge him with is possession of the copper.
Let me tell you,
it's just crazy.
These I've told you these numbers before. Last time I ran the numbers on repeat offenders, persistent felony offenders, who are people that have a number of prior felony convictions. We had 3,600 of them. As a group, these repeat offenders had been convicted of 50,000 crimes.
Wow.
That's 14 each, you see. And now these are the most prolific criminals we deal with. And what do we know about them, Officer Don? We know 2 things about these kind of prolific property criminals. We know that when they're on the street, they commit crime after crime after crime. We also know that when they're in custody, in jail or prison, they don't. Now, what's happened is the legislature has taken this prison, jail off the table, just leaving these people to rock and roll out there. And it's the public is getting beat up over it, and they're starting to really get hot. They're starting to realize what's happened to them. Mm-hmm. So how do you think we can manage this? Because metal thefts are...
Tune in to the following stations every Sunday to hear full episodes of In Touch with Ray the DA and Don Evans.